Hello, everybody. This is Mike DiMuccio, and I'm not Ben Woodward. Yes, I'm taking it today. Ben asked me to host, fill in for him. He's got a doctor appointment he forgot about. Regardless, we wish him and everybody well. It's not going to be a long call. I doubt we'll go the full 30 minutes because it may, in fact, end up being nothing more than a commercial for last night's call. If you haven't seen last night's call, which I published as maybe one of the best calls we've ever done with the Aligning with Success. And I'm not biased at all because it was my daughter that we were featuring, right? So, but truthfully, we covered a lot of ground, and so much so that we're going to cover part 2 next Monday, which will be more of the application for manifestation, for actually creating an outcome versus it's, and I'm going to give a bit of a preface on this as well. So first of all, thanks everybody for joining. Again, Ben is at an appointment, and he's asked me to fill in for him, and we'll just go a few minutes less than we normally do. So just by show of hands, how many of you were on last night's call? Okay, there's a few of you. If I may ask, if you could single out one item. So there's about 5 or 6 of you put your hand up. If you could single out one item, let's not make it a long down, it's not training, it's just an item. What one item from last night's call is a takeaway for you? Because I'm sure you've had a chance to really think about it and maybe made a lasting impression with you. So I'm going to just open it up. Whoever would like to go first, go ahead. Go ahead, Yoko.
Okay, for me, which was nice to be able to hear, was that I could, through meditation, create a more formalized means to all these years.
I'm sorry, I missed that. I missed that last point. I don't know if everybody else did. I've got maybe an internet thing. So you said, repeat that last statement.
It's please. Probably me. I'm sorry. My internet is terrible. Okay, what I'm saying is the meditation gave me a means to be able to connect formally instead of me, which all my life at different times I'm not sure where it's coming.
Yeah, we are definitely getting, is it just me? I'm getting intermittent signal from Yoko. Are you getting her signal?
Probably me. I'm sorry.
Okay. It's just like when you hit that point that you got to make, then it's you drop out. But you're saying, if I can recap, you have a formal mechanism. In other words, the meditation for you is now an applicable tool. Now you understand the correlation to the tool. Okay, that's really interesting. You should say that, because at dinner time, I had my 3 kids, my son especially, who's almost 18, and we watched the Joe Dispenza part 1 the night before, and what was interesting was, I'm just going to mute out a few of you that are coming in here. So Joe Dispenza's video put my son to sleep in the first 5 minutes, not because Joe's not interesting, but my son tunes out of anything that's in this space. He just, if it's not a video game or something like that, he simply tunes out. So we kind of knocked him around a little bit, because we were the entire family, and my brother or my sister and her family were all watching. And so we got him to start paying attention. And as he did pay attention, he started leading into the call, into the video. By the end of that hour-and-a-half long part 1, he was like full on into it. As we were heading back to my place, he was like, so we're going to watch the other parts tomorrow. So all of a sudden I noticed he's interested. This information got his attention at 17, almost 18 years of age. And I asked him last night at dinner, after we finished watching the whole 6 hours, I asked him, what was it about that? And he essentially said that it was, I'm paraphrasing, but essentially it gave him a tool. What he sees, the meditation is not, hocus pocus, woo woo kind of stuff. He saw a tool, like he would a pen or a calculator, or he sees a tool now for how that can help him tap into a mechanism for a much greater power of clarity, focus, and manifestation. So it's not any longer just a thing people do to pacify themselves. It's actually now a practical application, and he sees the value of it. And he's like, why don't they teach this in school or anywhere else? So yeah, I can totally relate, Yoko, to that, because I'm like you. I mean, just somebody who wouldn't really take the time to meditate, not seeing it being any more than just a nice thing to do, calm your mind, calm your body and all that. But if you recognize it's actually an application, it's a tool, then it changes that, because I'm always looking for that. You know me, I'm an engineer, I'm looking for tools. I'm looking for ways to accomplish something or to improve getting something done. And when it was explained from a scientific point of view and a physiological point of view, it became a tool. And now I understand what the fuss has been all about all these years with all the masters and all the gurus and so forth, that there's a reality to that. Anyone else? There's a few, put your hand up. Yes, anyone? Go ahead, Wes.
Unmute myself here. Yeah, you know, I'm an engineer too, and I suffer from the same the things, and you know, I really and I really like the field. I think Julie Tara is the one that talked me into going in that direction. Yeah, I welcome the opportunity to talk with anybody about that. I welcome the discussion last night. It was nice to hear somebody, but I really do believe that there is this that we don't connect. I think that there is something to love versus fear. That fear causes a retraction and a separation. And I think that love is a way to reach out and connect with people. I think we really have the kind of business where we really do need to sit down and be one-to-one with people and reach out with that that warm feeling in order to you know, help bring people along. I mean, years ago I read about, you know, body language, but you know, it comes from inside. It's a heart message, and we see it, you know, even in the Nikken hug, the difference in how the body responds to that energy. So I've really taken to, I mean, it took me a long time, you know, when I got started with this business years ago, it was a bunch of doctors trying to diagnose and prescribe. But I do believe we're an engineer, we're energy people in an energy universe, that energy is everything, whether we're talking about food, water, air. It's all about energy, the earth, the sun. It's a fantastic approach to, I mean, I'm just, what's the word that I want? Yeah, I'm just amazed by it all. You know, it's a fantastic way to look at life and live life. And I feel a response from that too. You know, when I behave along those lines, I get responses along those lines.
That's the mirror effect that Sophia was talking about last night. That was presented by Murjani, the woman who was on our call.
And when I find myself in difficult positions with people, and it's a very Christian thing too, you know, I just see them where they are, and I try to reach out subconsciously or you know, from my whole inside. It's a great way to live, you know. I do get a response.
Awesome, fantastic. Thank you, Wes. Anyone else? Yes.
I will speak, if I may, Mike. I took a different, something different impacted me last night. When Sophia said early emotional year with some issues that she had been having difficulty addressing. And I think a lot of us do have baggage that maybe we haven't dealt with. And when she talked about how she was able to center herself and meditations the proper way and allowing to flow into her, not to be looking for them or pre-selecting what she thinks that she should be thinking, doing, or saying, but just receiving. The difference in these meditations, and then the impact, the 9 days that the two of you did, and how her emotions are totally different, that there's no baggage now that's holding her back, that she's been able to address those issues. And I think a lot of us would like to be able to do that. So I know it that with, and so that hit me right between the eyes last night.
Okay.
Let's give this a try and see if that's the end of me dealing with issues that have been holding me back.
Okay, again, a tool. One of the things that I found profound was her comment. She actually used a physical emotion, and I commented to her last night after the call. I said, that was really good. It's often people here that we have to identify. I think it's my internet connection that's unstable. That's what I'm getting as a message on my screen. Are you guys able to hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up if you're hearing me. Okay, good. She said, you have to become aware of the program. She did this motion. And I said, that was really interesting, because most people know intellectually they have to become aware of a program. But when you actually see it like this, presented this way, it's like you're pushing the program out of you and separating it from yourself. The program being the subconscious, program being the tapes that are running in your head, the ego, the personality that you identify yourself with, the one that's on autopilot and speaks before you think. And when you can do that and you can separate it from yourself and you become aware of it, the moment you actually become aware of it means you've separated it from yourself. Now you're the observer observing the personality, and then you're in a position to actually listen or not listen, accept or reject the idea that maybe you were just simply operating on an autopilot. So becoming an observer, listening carefully for that personality, that program, is the first step in the transition. Now, why that's relevant is because 95% of every choice you're making is the program. You're not making the choice. The program is making the choice for you, and you're on autopilot, so you don't detect it. It's so familiar that it's not detectable. And only 5% of the time are we operating on a conscious level. So if you consider that, in terms of creating an outcome that you want to create in your business or in your life, if 5% of the input is what you want, really, and 95% of the input is the program, which input is going to create momentum? Which input is going to create the outcome? And that's why change rarely happens in a big way for people, because it takes an enormous amount of willpower to overcome the inertia of the subconscious mind that's 95% of the input. So the first thing we have to become clear on is the fact that that program exists and it's there and it's operating. And once that's the first step, you start hearing yourself say things. And then you realize that's not me. That may have been me once upon a time, or maybe that's just simply the program. The second you even make that awareness, you now create a space for a new choice, a new thing to happen, an unknown to take place, which means if it's an unknown input, it's an unknown output. And I would rather have an unknown output rather than a predictable one, which is not in my favor. Would you agree? I'd rather have an output that's in my favor, that's something by design, rather than something that's just a repeat performance. So this concept that she's speaking about, these presentations are about, that the talk last night was about, that I encourage you to watch or maybe rewatch, is how do we create the awareness? How do we create the gap so something unknown, something new can happen that changes the dynamics of our results? Someone else. I think Madeline, you had your hand up. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it was connecting that Proctor model of the subconscious, the conscious and the subconscious and the changes, to the I over M, 100 over 0 for intention, that exercise in humans being more, how much of a challenge that always was for almost every HBM class to get to the 100 over 0. And so it wasn't as much the individual tool. It's like it didn't matter which mechanism you used if the intention was 100%. So kind of connecting those two of what it takes to let go. And it's not easy work. The older that you are, the harder it is to let go or reprogram. And so, but the repetition and knowing that there are tools to choose and connecting that and kind of connecting it to the hugeness of the whole global shift that had to occur to really wake everybody up. So individually, our individual collective role in alignment with the whole, all the people in the world, because it has become global to really get people's attention. So just like what you had to do to get your son's attention, he might not have gotten his attention prior to not be able to have a graduation. And because this is really in this need to shift, or the shift that has occurred, and to shift back to whatever the new normal will be, is much bigger than me, Madeline, or the number of people that are on here today in this particular group.
Thank you, Madeline.
Can I add something about?
Yeah, let me just make this comment. The idea then that we are able to bypass the analytical mind when we go into a meditative state. And the thing was that what I liked about this and like about this is that it's not like I'm actually reprogramming myself. It's not like I'm having to re-educate or reprogram myself. All I'm actually doing is hitting the neutral button. It's like I'm pushing a reset button. When you go into the state of heart-mind convergence or congruence, you actually neutralize the program. You start to zero out the program, and so it just fades on its own. There's actually no real work involved other than getting into that meditative state, and then the natural harmony. It's like when you walk in the forest, you feel better because you're in harmony with the forest. You feel the energy of the forest. You feel better. You don't have to think about it. You don't actually have to do anything. You just have to put yourself there. There's a response, physiological and mental and emotional, to the environment. So all we have to do is put ourselves in the right environment, and then that happens. And the problem is we don't do that often enough, so the program is running our lives. Yeah, you're going to say, Wes?
Well, you know, when you talk about intentions, there are multiple intentions in play. I mean, I have multiple intentions, and when I'm talking with other people and I want to bring them along to what we're doing, I have to look at their intentions, and you know, how do I connect with them in a way that their intentions match up with mine, you know, or how do I
We're going to get into, next week, we're going to get into how to actually apply this where intention is involved. Yesterday was really about an awareness, an acknowledgement, and then establishing a 0 point, where if we can get to a 0 point, because unless you're at that 0 point, you're 95% programmed. So all your efforts are going to fail. I am this, I am this, I am this. And the body's saying, yeah, right. No, you're not. So if the body is telling you 95% of the time that what your head is trying to convince you of is wrong, what do you think wins? And we know the answer to that. So how do I get rid of the 95% noise? How do I zap out or tune out or neutralize that implicit, inherent voice of the program that's been operating? And so that's step number one, because you can't do step number two until you finish step number one, and it's an ongoing thing. But that's when you get into that state of harmonic convergence, or convergence of the mind and the heart. When they're coherent, mind-heart coherence, that is the place where you can actually be effective in terms of creation. It's a wave. Creation is a waveform. A thought is an actual wave. It's measurable. And so if you have an incoherent thought, because you're not conscious of the program that's running simultaneously as you're projecting an I am statement, and the subconscious is programmed saying, I am not that 95% of the time, then you're sending out a message that is to the universe incongruent. It's not harmonious. And so the universe is a mirror. It simply reflects back the non-harmonious message. And so our life very rarely changes much. It's so predictable. So we need to, first of all, get to a place where when I am broadcasting an I am, I'm broadcasting it on a frequency and a channel that's not being overwritten by the subroutine, the subprogram. And so that's where this meditative state, it's shifting the frequency so that we're actually broadcasting on a different bandwidth. And that bandwidth is not being interfered with the lower vibration. They're on two different planes. It's like this one's broadcasting AM and this one's broadcasting FM. It doesn't matter how many channels on the AM station, it's not affecting the FM channel. You got to get to the FM channel though to do the broadcast. Most people are broadcasting their FM signal through the AM channel. That's why it's not getting through. So for me, like I said, this became a technology. This 9 days of review has helped me to understand the technology of this information. Technology is really the language of science. You know, science is the language of the universe, where once upon a time, maybe theology or metaphysics was really the language. Science is now a language describing what we know in the universe. So when you get it to a place where you know you can repeat it, when it's predictable in terms of its ability to be repeated, then what you have is a technology. And that's most important. If we're ever going to become conscious creators, it's going to be important for us to have this awareness. Go ahead, Maggie.
Yes, thanks, Michael. Lower my hand. There we go.
You're unmuted. Go ahead.
Okay. I love what Joe Dispenza says about clear intention plus an elevated emotion. Those two together are so powerful, because without one or the other, you don't have the complete formula, and you're not on a clear station. I think there'd be a lot of interference. And I remember back to, like, I had a very abusive brother growing up, and he pretty much treated me poorly most of my life until I think I was in my 50s. And I decided, what the heck? And I'd been working on personal development for quite a few years by then, but he was my biggest challenge. I remember once I was going to visit my parents in Florida, and my brother decided to show up the same weekend. And this guy is a crazy dude, Michael. He is an amazingly brilliant, devious kind of guy. And so I made a decision. He wasn't going to ruin my holiday, no matter what he did. And I knew that as long as I resisted, he would up the ante. No matter what he did, I was going to stay in this place of non-reaction. So I had a plan. I had the intention, and the plan was, if it gets too hot, leave, go for a walk on the beach, go to the bathroom, do whatever, but don't put your sails in his wind. So it was a tough week, believe me. I did a lot of walking and a lot of toilet trips. And I was so committed to that goal to change that dynamic, because I love my brother, right? And I knew that there had to be a way for this silly game to stop. At the end of the week, his even crazier girlfriend said to me, "How did you do that?" I said, "How did I do what?" She said, "He tried every which way to bug you and to get you to react, and you didn't." I said, "Well, because I made a decision that he wasn't going to do that anymore." And our relationship truly changed after that. I mean, I never felt very comfortable with him, or I never really trusted him, because I had these, years and years of abuse. However, I had a way of at least getting closer to him than I'd ever been in my life. So it takes practice. And Sophia said that so well last night. There's the understanding, the awareness, and looking at the program over here and not buying into it, and creating something new by connecting to, the superconscious or the universe or whatever, so that we are equipped to make different choices. And that has served me so well in my life, even now. When people get into, and I mean, we are in such a positive bubble with Nikan, right? I'm not used to people whining and whinging. I was on the phone with my husband, as I fondly call the man who was my husband. And he gets into this whole thing about, oh, the boys aren't doing this and they're not doing that. I mean, our boys are almost 50, right? I just said, I'm going to myself, I got to get off this call. This is crazy. But I was able to stay in that place of, that did not affect my impression or my view of my sons. So yeah, it does take practice. And, you know, I've been on the planet a long time, so.
Oh, okay. So with respect to taking practice, then, not as a generality, I'm talking about as with a frequency, meaning we're told that if you're not making phone calls every day, you don't have a business, you have a hobby, right? So you need to be in the habit of making phone calls. But if there's something holding you back from making the phone calls, or if the phone calls are yielding the same results, then what has to change? You've got to switch the program. So it has to happen with frequency, meaning daily, once at least a day, maybe more. If you could, if you knew, and here's a question, it's a question that was asked. If you knew, if you believed 100%, I mean, you were all in on this belief that a simple exercise of 20 minutes per day, you could create anything you wanted in your life. Health, prosperity, you name it. If you knew and believed 100% that all it took was this application, 20 minutes a day, who wouldn't do it? Who wouldn't commit to doing it? Everyone would. But of course, that wasn't what you were educated to believe. You weren't taught this. In fact, if anything, it was repressed or suppressed entirely. And maybe there was a counterfeit version of this given to you, and you thought, oh, if I keep doing that and pray to Santa Claus is going to give me a gift every now and then, throw me a bone every now and then, if I'm not bad. You know, this loving God who wants to damn me to hell and burn me in fires to infinity, this loving God of mine. How insane is the program? How insane is the program? What's sanity? What is insanity? And most of us are operating a program that is not actually very sane. In fact, maybe the first definition of sanity is when you become aware of the insanity of the program that's been running your life. That's the first step towards sanity. Let me make, go ahead.
It's not our fault, this whole
It's
program.
not our fault. You were born into the program, but we're no longer at a point in the history of our evolution where it's acceptable to accept the story. Oh, you were born with these genetic defects, and so it's in your genes. You're going to develop this illness because it's in your genes. When we now know, scientifically proven, validated, that we actually create our genes as we go. It's called epigenetics. You want to study that? Study Bruce Lipton. He's been teaching since the 60s about epigenetics. The idea that we are a product of our environment, and our environment consists of literally our environment, and it is defined by our emotions and our psychology. So it's not just what happens to us, it's literally how we interpret what happens to us. Two identical twins born in the same conditions, same environment, same genetics, very different outcomes based on the interpretation of the stimuli. And this has been proven time and time again. So it's this awareness that there's a program and that we are susceptible to the program because it's operating and been operating in our lives most of our life, 95% of the time, unconsciously. It's becoming a conscious creator. The step in evolution that is necessary for the world, for us as individuals, has to happen, and it's being called upon more now than ever before. I want to leave you with a question. Now, two things I want to say, and we're running out of time, so I'm going to wrap up this call. I want to say, first of all, if you haven't listened to last night's Aligning with Success call, please do. There's so much value in that call. You're going to have some aha moments. I have no question about it. And it's really just two people talking about their experience of what they just went through and how that has been internalized. And you'll find, I'm sure, things that you can identify with. Secondly, there's going to be a call next week to finish up that dialogue, because the next piece of this, the most important piece, is how do we apply it to create an outcome, to create a new reality, to create. So the premise last night, which is supported by all the stuff that we talked about, is your personality creates your personal reality. Your personality. So this is who you define yourself as. If somebody said to you, tell me about yourself, you would have a list of things that would define you. You would be defined by these things, and you would consider all those things that you've attached yourself to, your identity to, is your personality. So imagine all the things you've identified yourself to: your house, your car, material things are things that you given a label to attach to yourself and create your identity. What other things? Emotional things, all kinds of things. Now, here's the question I'm going to leave you with, and it's the question we're going to come back to on Monday. Are you defined by your vision of the future or your vision of the past? Because if you are defined by your vision of the past, then what will you create ongoingly is the repeat of the past. If you're defined by your vision of the future, and what I mean by defined is in every sense of the word, how do you define yourself, your characteristics, your personality, those things you attach as labels to yourself? If you're not defining yourself in terms of your future, then you are automatically defining yourself in terms of your past. And therefore, what are you going to create? And so here we are, setting goals, setting affirmations, all that to assist us in moving forward, but we haven't changed our identity. We haven't identified with that person who's victorious in their achievement. We continue to identify ourselves as ourselves. And hear yourself, listen to yourself. Every day, how do you identify yourself? Listen to the words, I'm, I am. Listen to how you identify yourself and ask yourself, are you defined by the past or the future? Very important. The Aligning with Success audio or video, the links are always on the Royal Alliance YouTube channel. You'll find it there. And I'm not sure if we lost electricity. No, we haven't. Okay, good. We got a rainstorm coming right now. But please take the time to learn about that and come back next Monday where we'll get into what is it that you can actually do. And you got the sort of a bit of the idea of an intention with the elevated motions, how that can actually play out as a creation in a timeline in the quantum field that is supported by a new identity. And therefore, that will yield momentum. That will overrule the personality program. It's amazing, but I'm just so excited about what I've been exposed to, because for me, it's always about defining the formula. There is a formula that describes the quantum field, the field of all fields, the thing of all things, the everything. And they've been working on this as science for a long time. Einstein gave him a piece of that. The energy, matter is energy. Now we know matter's not matter, matter is energy. And matter doesn't move matter, energy moves matter. So if you're matter trying to move matter, that's a hard job. But if you operate in the quantum field, your energy moving matter, that's simple. You know, in the quantum field, time doesn't exist. It only exists in the matter field, in the three-dimensional field. So what do you think it takes so long to get anything done? Because we're matter trying to push matter instead of operating in the quantum field, which precipitates into form as matter. It's science, guys. It's as real as anything you can point to. And it's been proven over and over again. It's just not common knowledge. And we need, for first of all, to become, it needs to be part of our life and embraced by us and applied by us and affirmed by us, so that we can be those living things that can go out into the world and say, no, it's not a theory, it's real, I've experienced it, let me tell you a few stories. And then you own it. And when you own it, you become the light that we've been waiting for. You become the very essence of the enlightened ones that have been, you know, here on the planet walking before us, telling us the same thing, maybe in a different language. So anyway, I want to thank you again for joining. We did go a little bit over, and I look forward to seeing you next Monday. Cheers, everybody. Have a great week.
I got you, Mike. Thank you.